Hi, I'm Philip Yancey, and I'm a writer from the United States. And they tell me that I've had 13 books translated into Hungarian and published here. The 13th one is the one I want to talk about. It's called Where the Light Fell, and it's my own story. It's a memoir about my life. All my other books are wrestling with certain questions, things like why bother with church? Or does prayer make any difference? Or who is Jesus anyway? This is different. It's a story. It's not an essay. It's not an idea-driven book. It's my own story. And it explains why I write the books that I do. It opens with a scene, a true scene. I don't remember it because I was only 1 year old, but my father contracted polio. That was the great pandemic back in the early 1950s. And a group of Christians around him believed that he would be healed. He was so paralyzed he couldn't even breathe on his own. He was kept in an iron lung, and the machine breathed for him, forcing his lungs in and out. But when the Christians believed he would be healed, they had him removed from the iron lung. And a few days later, he died. And I learned early on, as soon as I heard this story, that not everyone who claims to speak for God actually does. These people loved him, they cared for him, they wanted him to live, and they thought they heard from God, but they were tragically wrong. And that gave me a bit of skepticism about the church and about people who would say, God told me this, God told me that. And my whole career as a writer has been trying to cut through the words to find out what's authentic, to separate the fake from the real. I grew up in a pretty extreme church. I write about it in the book. As extreme as any that I know, and a pretty extreme family. And I meet a lot of people along the way who have given up on church. And they'll know I'm a Christian author, and they'll say, well, I tried the church once, but I don't go anymore. Here's why. And they expect me to be defensive. Instead, I kind of sit back and laugh and say, oh, it's a lot worse than that. Let me tell you my church story. And they say, wait a minute, I thought you were a Christian author. And I go on to say, well, I am, but we have a saying in English, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. To make the trade of giving away a chance to relate to the God of the universe because of what some church did to you 20 years ago, that's a bad trade. I have found instead that it's worth it to pursue authentic faith, and that's what I've been doing in my writing, struggling with these issues one by one. And it's worth it at the end to find a faith that I can stand on and discuss with others. I look back on my own childhood and the hard times that I went through as a young adult. There was a lot of pain and suffering. And what I have found is that God doesn't necessarily remove that pain and suffering, doesn't take it away, but He does promise to redeem it, to find something useful about it. In fact, I call God the great recycler. Because when I finished this memoir, Where the Light Fell, at the end I look back and I realized that nothing was wasted, that even the most difficult parts were used together in my story to create the person that I am now. And that's a promise that all of us have, that God can take whatever you are, all of your qualities, all of your family history, even things that you wish had not happened, and somehow create a work of art. We have that promise in the Bible. And I've told the story of how God did that in my own life in this book, Where the Light Fell. I hope you enjoy it.